So we're now going to have a go at making a boat-shaped shelf unit like the one in our photograph here. And this is another of those projects that I'm sort of making up as I go along. So I'm going to give you the measurements as I cut the pieces. And you want to start with a piece of 1.5mm sheet wood, 1/16 of an inch, measuring 127mm by 50mm. So that's 5 inches by 2 inches. And I'll try to keep the measurements really simple as we go along. And then also cut a piece of paper to the same size as that piece of wood, and this is going to be our back piece, and we're going to shape it into the shape of the base of a boat. So take your piece of paper and fold it in half lengthways. Make a crease down the centre like that, and then let's have a think. Let me bring my pencil in. I told you I was making it up as I go along. We probably want it to sort of curve in just after halfway, I think, and then up into a point like that. So that little area where I started the curve, or the point, sorry, at which I started the curve, is 83mm. So make a little pencil mark, 83mm, and that is 3¼ inches from the bottom on the open edge of your template. So 83mm, 3¼ inches, and then from that point make your little curve and go up into the centre of the template like that. And then cut that out. Just cutting a nice sort of little curve in just below the little pencil mark that we made. And we're now going to trace that onto our piece of wood, onto our back piece. Line up your template. My piece of paper was a little bit longer than my piece of wood, so I'm getting the point right at the top there, and then draw it onto your piece of wood. And we're going to cut that out. So start with your scribe, and we just want to etch that pencil line into the wood. So just making short little movements like that. Just go along the pencil line. I'm sort of going against the grain, so it will be trying to move the nib of the scribe along and getting it into one of the grooves. So just do little pencil marks like that. And the same on the other side there. If you come across a little knot like that, just sort of go over it a few times and you should be able to get a line there. So you've got something that looks like that. And then bring in your craft knife, and when I'm doing something like this I like to have a nice new blade in. So I've just put a new blade in there, and we're now going to go over that line with the tip of the blade. So we're not sort of trying to cut through yet, but don't worry if it does cut through. We're just sort of scoring that line deeper into the wood. And then as we're removing quite a large area, I'm not going to score my lines. If it was a smaller area I'd put little scores in it like that and then move one bit at a time. But as we're moving quite a large section, I'm just going to keep going over with the tip of my blade until I've cut through. You almost sort of hear it crack when it goes through. And don't pull it away until you're sure that you have cut completely through. Again, be really sort of careful of where your fingers are in relation to the blade. Always just be thinking about it and try not to have your fingers behind the blade. Okay, like that. And then we're just going to tidy those bits up with a piece of sandpaper. I've got 180 grade here, so just sweep it along. And you really only want to go along that cut edge. We don't want to round over at either side of it, so just stick to the edge and just be taking off the rough edge. You can make that curve more of a curve by sort of sweeping over it, and then do the same at the other side so that each side is even. Turn the piece upside down and do a little pencil mark 3mm or 1/8 of an inch from each edge of the wood. So 3mm, 1/8 of an inch. Like that, and then turn it on its side and do a pencil mark 25mm, 1 inch up from the bottom, like that. Just go across to each side. And then we're going to go from that line down to that little 3mm line, just making another little curved area. No need for our template this time because we're just going to sort of draw it in like that, and the same on the other side. Just to give it a more of a sort of boat shape, and then you can do the same thing again. So start off with your scribe. And by using the scribe first, it's just easier to keep the knife on track. If you go straight in with the knife, you find that you sort of overcut the line. Bring your knife in again. Start just with a light score, and then gradually go a little bit deeper until you cut that section away. Like that. Same at the other side. And again, we can tidy that up. Stick to the side so that you're not rounding it over, but you can round that bottom edge in a little bit. Looks a bit like an ironing board or a surfboard at the moment. And then sand the surface of that piece to remove the pencil marks. Rid of the sanding dust. Now measure across the straight bottom edge of the back piece and cut a piece that width by 25mm or 1 inch deep, and that will become our bottom piece. Turn the piece on its side again, and we're going to do 2 pencil marks now for the shelf or placement of the shelves. So the first one will be 38mm or 1.5 inches from the bottom edge. Just do a little line there like that. Same at the other side, 38mm, 1.5 inches, and then 76mm from the bottom or 3 inches. Another little line there, 76mm, 3 inches. Join those lines up and then measure across the lines. So measuring the area that will sit across there. So we've got 50mm there, or 2 inches, or mine is so the same size as my original piece. So I haven't sanded too much off. So measure across the first line, and you want to cut a piece that wide, again by 25mm or 1 inch, and then do the same up there, and again that's still 50mm. So cut a piece for each pencil line, and they'll become our shelves. So we're now going to glue the bottom and the shelf pieces into place, and to make sure that we've got them square, I'm using a piece of 12mm or 1/2 inch balsa. This is what I used for spacing our shelves in the shop yesterday. And once we've glued the piece in place, I'm just going to use that so that I know the piece is upright. So find something like that, piece of strip wood or any sort of little square chunk of wood that you've got that you can use just to keep the piece upright. So we'll start with the bottom piece. I'm going to attach this right along the bottom edge of the back piece. You can use that piece first to make sure that it is pushed right to the bottom, and then bring that piece in. In fact, before I put that in place, I'm just going to remove that little bit of excess glue so that it doesn't actually stick there, and then push that right into the corner and pull the bottom piece up, and that will square it up. Let me just show you that from the side as well. So the bottom piece is right along the bottom edge of the back, and our little strip of wood is right in the corner. I'm pressing the pieces against it to make sure that they're completely upright. So I just want to move that piece now really carefully, and we'll move up to the next shelf, but my battery light is flashing, so whilst that piece dries I'll go and change the battery. Back in a minute. Okay, so now on the next shelf piece, so apply glue to the long edge. I'll just turn the boat round so that I'm not sort of knocking that bottom piece as I'm applying this piece. So sit the shelf just below the line, so you can just sort of see the line above the shelf there. Press it into place, remove the excess glue, need to go over that way a tiny bit, and then put your piece of strip wood in. And even though you think it's upright, see how much that came forward when I actually put the little block of wood in. So even though you think you can judge by eye, sometimes you can't. Like that. Carefully move the block, and then our final shelf. Again, we've got some nice tall shelves here, so we can fit loads of lovely bits on. That one as well, just below the pencil line. Again, making sure that you're sort of within the back piece. Press those down again. I didn't remove the excess, did I? So let me move that. Already started sticking. Balsa wood sticks even easier when you're using wood glue, so do be careful. Okay, so let's leave that piece to dry, and I can work out the length now of our side pieces. So for the side pieces we're going to be using 0.8mm sheet wood, and that's 1/32 of an inch, and that's just so that we can shape it around the edges of the boat more easily. And we're going to be doing a long side and a short side, and the short side will measure 135mm by 29mm, and that is 5 5/16 of an inch by 1 1/8 of an inch, and then the long side is 136 millimeters by 29 millimeters, which is 5 3/8 of an inch by 1 1/8 of an inch. And the reason they're different lengths is just that the shorter piece will go on first, and then the top piece will wrap round and incorporate the thickness of the end of the first piece. Or that's the plan anyway. So to shape these pieces, we're actually going to be using the steam from the kettle. Use long nosed tweezers or a pair of pliers to hold the piece of wood above the steam from a kettle. You may need to boil the kettle a couple of times to get the wood to become pliable. Don't hold your hands over the steam, but take the piece away from the kettle and just very gently bend it into a curve. And if you're wondering whose hands those are, they belong to Matt, who's helping me out with this step so that I can film and steam at the same time. So very annoyingly, my camera ran out of memory just at that crucial moment when I was fitting that first piece, but I had to carry on, otherwise I would have had to peel it off and start again. But having sort of done that practice run, I can tell you that it's very important to have probably about 7 little strips of masking tape ready to attach the piece actually to the side as we're fitting it, otherwise it just sort of pops off as you go along. Also have your glue ready so that you can come straight back into your sort of work area and apply the glue. And that piece didn't go on too badly, but there are a couple of little gaps which I'm not too worried about because we'll be able to use a little bit of filler to fill those in once the glue has dried. And also this top piece, because it's not attached to anything, it's trying to flare out. But when we bring that other side in, hopefully we'll be able to pop a bit of tape over the top there. In fact, I'm going to cut an extra bit of tape for that, because I used 7 pieces just around that side. So let me cut an extra little bit, and then we can put one bit right over the top, the sort of point of the boat, when we come back in. So I'm going to go back out to the kettle again and warm this piece up, and then I shall be back. Okay, so that's my piece there. I'm just giving it a gentle little bend, and then I'm going to apply the glue. I'm trying to work quite quickly. I didn't even turn the camera off as I went out into the kitchen because I want to just be able to come back and press the button, but hopefully the battery doesn't go next as we'll have to make another one of these. Probably a bit too much glue there, but we'll worry about that in a moment. So, am I on camera there? Let's move down a little bit. And then attach starting at the bottom. Make sure it's flush with the back. So try and sort of push it around first so that you're still kind of shaping it and the shape isn't disappearing. And then start with your first piece of masking tape at the bottom there. I'm so sorry my hands are in the way. I'm not used to this sort of technique yet. I'm sort of learning with you. If you've done wood shaping, let me know. Any tips would be very welcome. Although this seems to be working okay. So just feed it around. And I have done this so it's slightly deeper than the actual shelves, so we've got a little bit of a overhang, and that's how it was in the picture as well, and I quite like the look of that. So just work your way around with your tape, pull in the piece into place, and looking at it now, it's gone a little bit long at the top there, so let's glue those together. And then we can always trim that off. So glue anyway. Let's get a piece right over that top. And that should sit on top of that first piece. Actually, that might not be too bad. Well, that might not be too bad actually. It looked rather long when I was sort of putting it into place. And then just use your other little bits of tape to go round. I'm going to put a piece there. Just use as much tape as you can, and it will all sort of hold it together. And I'm going to cut another couple of pieces as well and fill in those little gaps. You can never find the end of tape when you're rushing, can you? Cut a couple of pieces off there. Nice and tight. So by heating up the wood, you're just making it nice and pliable so that you can shape it around. And I did try sort of shaping it around without heating it. And 0.8 is fairly flexible, but it's quite dry as well. So the more I sort of tried to bend it, it was sort of sounding as though it was starting to crack. So it is better to heat it up. But do just be careful of your fingers above the steam. Don't hold them directly above the kettle steam, which I'm sure you know anyway, but I don't want to make you do something that's going to harm you for the sake of a miniature boat. Okay, so let's put a couple of pieces across the front as well. So we don't want to misshape it, but if we just put it, you see it's sort of just trying to flex out at the edges of the shelves. So let's put some bits over like that. But really not too bad, is it? I'm quite pleased with that. The fun part is going to be painting this, and I've got some ideas for the paint. I didn't mean to squeeze that in quite as much, but put a bit over each shelf where there's a bit of support. That's not long enough. Let's use that round there. And then a bit over there as well. Like that. Now it's 20 to 5 now, so I want to get those little crates finished off before I finish for the day. So I'll leave that to dry overnight, and then we'll come back to that. Actually, I've got parcels to do tomorrow, so it may not even be until Friday, but I'll have a look at it tomorrow and see what's happened and see how that has dried. But I think so far so good. So we can do a little bit of sanding, make that point look really nice. And I'm really looking forward to adding some paint, but we could have some different colours around the sort of edges and the edges of the shelves, like the one in the picture. We make it look like an old boat. And then we'll have a lot of fun putting lots of accessories and miniatures in there. Okay, so I'm waffling now. So we'll get on with those crates now and get those finished off. So I've got a small piece of 240 grade sandpaper here, and I just want to very lightly sand back the top coat in areas. I'm going to go a little bit harsher in some areas. If I just wipe the dust off there, you can see all those lovely colours coming through, and it just looks like a sort of old weathered fisherman's box or something. I started that sentence, didn't really know how to finish it, but you know what I mean. Sort of thing you'd find in an old fisherman's hut with ropes in or something. I like that. So do that around each side of the box. Obviously you don't have to spend as much time on the back of the crate if you don't want to. So once I'd finished sanding, I used a wet piece of kitchen towel just to get rid of the sanding dust. And then you want to choose the nicest sort of front of your box or your crate to attach your decal to if you're using decals. So I'll just pop those two there, lay that one down, and these have been soaking probably for about a minute now. And if you haven't used decals before, I did a monthly vlog all about how to create designs for decals and how to actually make them and attach them to your pieces, so you might want to have a look back at that if this is something you'd like to do. That's peeling off of there now, so I'll grab it with my tweezers. Shake off the excess water, and then I'm just going to sort of position that centrally across the box by eye. And the writing there is actually in a nice dark green colour, which goes really nicely with the colours I've used on the box there. I think that's about straight. And the beauty of these is if you put them on and you think it's not quite right, you can just peel them off, pop them back in the water and try again. I quite like that. And it adds a little personal touch to everything you put in the shop then, by using your little Harbour Homewares decals and things, or the name of your shop obviously. So I'll apply these, and then we're just going to attach a couple of little string handles to each crate. So begin by using a cocktail stick just to poke through the little holes. Mine are all filled with paint. So we're now going to do some little no knot handles. So cut a piece of string about 3 inches, a couple for each crate. And then apply glue to the inside of the crate, just below those holes, and you can go all the way down. And then poke the string through, and I find it helps if you sort of twist as you push. Twisting the wrong way then, so you want to twist with the twist of the string. And if you're having trouble getting the string in, just make your holes a little bit bigger, like that. Let that unravel. And bring in a paintbrush or a pencil or something like that, and that's just to keep the sort of handle there while we tug at the string. And then glue it down on the inside of the box, which will mean getting a rather gluey thumb. Just sort of press it down in there. Like that. Get the glue off your thumb, and then remove the paintbrush. There's our first little handle. And it's just so much easier than sort of struggling in there to tie those little tiny knots and getting them in the right place. So, no knot handles, new invention. And then what you can do is just to put a little tiny bit of glue underneath the handle like that and stick it down to the side of the crate. Just to make it look a little bit more natural. Okay, so 1 down, 2 to go, and then we'll have a look what they look like in situ. So the crates will be stood beneath the bottom shelf there. I think they look really nice, and then when we've actually put some bits in them, you won't be able to see the string handles or the paint that's on the inside edges there. And I'll just pop the counter back And although we won't be able to sort of see the crates around the counter, we can if we peep in down that side, or if we come in and peep around from here. And I really like that you've got sort of little hidden treasures in corners and things that you have to move your head to sort of see. And then the little boat is still drying, but I've just put it there in the corner where I think we'll have it. And I think that looks really nice. And I really can't wait to get back to this on probably Friday. But it's now 20 to 6, so I'm going to call it a day. But before I go, I just want to take some promotional pictures for our Patreon page to hopefully try and entice a few more people over to join us. So it's now Friday morning, and I've been really looking forward to getting back to our little boat shelf. So let's remove the tape and see how it's dried. So I've got one or two gaps around the edges. I'm trying to angle it so that the light is coming through. So you can see a bit of gapping around the sides there, a little bit of a gap in the bottom there. And a little bit of an overhang at the top, but otherwise that top bit doesn't look too bad, and I can sand that back a little bit. And thinking about it, I wanted the shelves to go in, so we had a little bit of a overhang of the sides, but I should have done the bottom piece so that it did actually meet the sides, or so that it was as deep as the sides. So when you do that bottom piece, just make it a little bit deeper, so that you've got sort of like a full edge there. But it doesn't look too bad. I'm not going to change it now. So what I'm going to do is just give this some really gentle sanding, just to sort of even it all up. And you can actually start by sanding the back flat down on your work surface, but because these sides are 0.8, just be really careful when you're doing it. Don't put too much pressure on, and always sort of hold where the pieces are supported by the shelves. That just sort of flattens off that back area. And then I'm going to do the rest of the sanding in my hand. I'm just looking for a 240 piece here. And again, just be really careful. Always support the wood that you're working on. I'll just try and flatten out that little overhang there. Going to do with these to make them look a little bit more intentional is just to sort of round them over a little bit at the bottoms there. It flows in a little bit more nicely then. So now I want to go and get my wood filler, and we'll get rid of all of those little gaps. So I used a soft brush to get rid of all the sanding dust, and I've got here my Bonsall Smooth Finish filler, which is a really fine wood filler, and I've also got a little glue spreader here to apply it. So I'm going to start by applying it around the back and around those sort of cracks along the side. And this is so easy to use, this fine one, because you can just put it on in a big sort of chunk like that and then spread it over, and it just really works its way into all those little tiny little hairline cracks. And you don't have to do a lot of sanding afterwards either. Okay, so I've applied quite a bit of wood filler around the back there, and you can still see a couple of the little cracks through from the back, but don't forget this is going to be standing in a corner of the shop, so there's not going to be any light coming through from the back, so I think we can get away with those. And then as I was working on it, I heard a little crack and the top two pieces come apart, so I put lots of glue in, and then I've put a bit of masking tape round to hold those together. So I'm going to let that completely dry off now, and then I'm looking forward to applying the paint. So my top piece is now dried nicely back together, and I've just given that a really gentle sand to get rid of the wood filler. And now I'm going to start the painting. So I'm going to start with a coat of Vancouver over the entire piece, and then I'm going to use some masking tape and we'll create some stripes on there. Okay, so that's the first coat done, and I'm now going to leave that to dry completely. So the paint has now completely dried, and I want to do a blue stripe around the bottom, or around the back in this case, and then a little thinner blue stripe around the front outside edge. So I've got a piece of masking tape here which I've sliced in half, or just over half, so it's about 12mm or ½ an inch. So I'm going to put that, so I'm creating that thin line around the front edge. Just want a really thin line around there. And then that bottom line will be my thicker blue line, and we'll have the pale left underneath the tape. So just go around like that. And then you want to really press that down. Use your fingernail to really get it to stick down against the wood, otherwise you'll find that the paint seeps underneath. And I'm being really careful so as to not pop that top bit apart again. So I'm using the navy blue paint here. And I'll go around the back first. And actually, where I'm brushing that on, just the one coat, the paint underneath is sort of showing through, and I quite like that, a sort of brushed effect. So I'm going to do that all over, not sort of apply it too thickly. Make sure you go right along the edge of the tape so you've got that nice sharp line there. Fingers crossed when we take the tape off. I'm almost sort of dry brushing now, removing some of that paint. Giving a really nice effect, that sort of brushed wood. Let's do around the other side now. Not quite got hold of it right there. And then I'm going to change to a thinner brush to do this side piece, because I also want this blue to be around the front edge of the 0.8mm wood, and then I'm going to go along the shelves as well. So let me go and find my smaller brush. I've actually switched to an even smaller brush still here, so size 0 detailing brush to go around these front edges. Because I don't really want to sort of overlap onto the inside, I want it to look nice and sharp. And with this you can really just let the side take the paint from the brush, if you know what I mean. You're really just brushing it lightly along. I'm just touching in a couple of little white areas on the outside line, but not too bad. On close inspection you'll probably see a few little, you know, where I've gone inside a little bit, but you know, just viewing it from a distance, that looks okay. And I was laying it down now to do these shelves. So to get a sort of finer point on your brush, just sort of twist it in your paint. I'm just going to twist it on top of the brush as well. Get the excess off there. Let's have a go. Getting the detailing shapes there. Trying to concentrate because I'm thinking in my head, oh, it's not looking too bad. And I know as soon as I start thinking that, I'll go over the edge. You can have some real fun with this design. I was thinking when when you've made the back piece and shaped it, before actually attaching the shelves, you could put some paper on the back to actually line the inside of the boat with a nice sort of nautical paper or something. You could do lots of different colours. You could even do each shelf front a different colour, lots of different stripes on the side, or if you're really good at painting, you could perhaps do some little hand painted shapes, you know, anchors or ship's wheels or things like that. Waves. Now that's not quite as neat, but you know, from a distance and when the shelf is dressed, I think that will look pretty good. I'm going to go along that bottom as well. Yes, I have gone over in a few places. I'll show you on the inside. I've gone over quite a bit down there, so I might just touch over that again with the lighter coloured paint. But yeah, I think that looks okay. Now I'm going to trust you to be really good here and behave yourselves and not remove the tape until the paint has completely dried. So you'll have to go away and do something else, and then we'll come back and remove the tape later on. So that's been drying probably for about half an hour now, so moment of truth. Just peel it off nice and slowly. I always enjoy doing this. That's made quite a nice line actually, so far. And sort of straight after I'd cut the masking tape and attached it, I was thinking I could have actually used washi tape, which I wouldn't have needed to cut because it's only sort of 1/2 inch wide and it's a little bit stronger than masking tape. And although I'm quite happy with this result, the washi tape will stick even better so that you'll get those sharper lines. But having said that, I'm really pleased with that. I think that looks really good. So let's put that back into the shop. And there it is in its little corner. Now I will have that pushed sort of right back into the corner like that, as obviously we need room for all the other bits that we've planned. But I'm really pleased with that, and I think when we dress it as well, that's going to look really good. And I'm thinking of having, we'll use those little wooden embellishments that I've got, those little nautical themed embellishments. Make a little plinth, use a cocktail stick as a little stem, and then stick the embellishment on top to make some sort of little, you know, ornamental display pieces, and we'll have that filled with those. I think that will look quite nice, and we can paint those as well in all different colours. But that will be in the next episode, and I'm going to wrap up now. I think I've been recording for quite a while now, but I won't know how long the episode is until I actually start editing. but I hope you've enjoyed the bits that we've made today. So that's it for this episode, and I really hope you've enjoyed the projects that I've shared with you today. I'm really pleased with how it's all looking. Now in the next episode we'll do a couple of more furniture tutorials and maybe get on with that bed for the first floor as well, which I'm really looking forward to making. So until the next episode, take care and I'll see you then. Bye!